Here's the first part of the Intro to the Enlightenment. Hopefully we can do this in one video, but we'll see. So what is the Enlightenment? Okay, it's a new intellectual movement during the approximately 1600s to 1800s that's stressing reason and thought, so using reason and using thought, common sense to solve problems, the power of individuals to solve problems rather than just society looking at them and solving them. Individuals start to take actions. Okay, and we're looking at issues in society and government rather than the church with the Protestant Reformation and culture with the Renaissance and science and nature with the scientific revolution. This time period is also called the Age of Reason. So how did we get here? Well, we got here through the combination of all of the things before. So the Renaissance, Protestant Reformation, exploration, and scientific revolution. All of these things together, challenging old ideas that people had held for a couple hundred years, is going to lead to us thinking about society and government. And so we challenged culture in the Renaissance, we challenged ideas about the church in the Protestant Reformation, we discovered new lands and exploration, we further challenged ideas about the natural world, and discovering that there were some laws that could apply to natural world, like the law of gravity. And that makes us start to think about whether there are certain laws that apply to all humans, like natural rights and things like that. So all of this is being tumbled together in the dryer to come out with the Enlightenment. It's a really bad metaphor, but go with it. So we're having some changes in beliefs. First change is going to be in government. We're also going to see some changes in religion. Some people are going to become less religious. They're going to be called deists. We're going to see some changes in economics with a guy named Adam Smith, which we'll talk about later. And we're going to see some changes in education where more people are educated than before. So why is this important? Well, a lot of the freedoms and forms of government in many countries today are a result of Enlightenment thinking. For example, the English government, the French government, the American government are all coming from the Enlightenment, like democracies are coming from the Enlightenment. And so the Enlightenment is going to influence a lot of things by sparking revolutions around the world, specifically in Americas and France. When we say Americas, we don't just mean like USA. We're talking about North and South America because there are going to be some revolutions in South America that we'll look at too in our next unit before the midterm. So we're getting these ideas that maybe our government is not so good and maybe we should replace it. We're also going to see Enlightenment ideas spread through pamphlets and formal discussions hosted by wealthy middle-class women. These formal discussions will have a group of Enlightenment thinkers, of very smart people, of the people in the middle class, maybe upper middle class, joining together. They might have dinner, they might have some card games, and they'll just be talking. And while they're talking, somebody might say an idea and another person hears that and rolls with it and gets another idea. And so at these salons, a lot of people are sharing ideas, and maybe that starts to generate some ideas. When we talk about pamphlets, pamphlets are short little essays that they would write and be printed up kind of like a brochure that people might hand you on the street or something, and they would be spread out. And they would write these short little essays rather than full long books because it was easier for people to read and kind of get their ideas rather than read an entire book, get the idea quickly, kind of like a SparkNotes thing. We've got some very important people that we're going to meet and going to be looking at very deeply in this unit. The first is a guy named Thomas Hobbes. He is from England, and he lived during the English Civil War, and he saw how brothers were killing brothers. And I'm not saying this in like a metaphor. I'm actually talking about there were brothers killing their younger or older siblings because of differences in beliefs over whether the king or parliament should rule. And so Thomas Hobbes gets what we call a very dim view of human nature. And he writes about this in a book called The Leviathan. Leviathan is the name of a sea monster. And so in this, Thomas Hobbes is talking about how men are nasty, brutish, and short. We don't mean short as in like physical height. We mean short-tempered. And he says mankind are animals. Okay, and he's talking about himself too. He's not just talking about others, he's talking about himself. But Hobbes does believe all men are equal in this nasty, brutish, and short. Okay, so they're all the same. And he is going to talk about the idea where we are handing over rights to a ruler, which is called the social contract. Okay, so we hand over our rights to freedom and liberty in Hobbes's version to a strong ruler in order to gain law and order. So in Hobbes's version, this ruler needs total power, which results in an absolute monarch, which is what Hobbes thinks is the best form of government. So we're creating government in order to prevent men from fighting, men from going to war, to protect law and order and keep the peace. So that's Hobbes's view. The other philosophers that we're going to have believe in much different things. Okay, and so they have 5 core beliefs. They believe in reason, that truth can be found through reason. They believe in nature, that the natural is good and reasonable. They believe in happiness, that you can find happiness in this life. Life is not just this dim thing that you've got to get through. They believe in progress, that people in society can improve and make differences and your life will be better. And they believe in liberty, that people should have the protection of the law. So, our next philosopher is John Locke. He is also from England. He believes that people can learn from experience and improve themselves. He believes people can govern themselves. And he believes that people can look after the welfare of society. Okay, so people are good and reasonable and can do these things. And so he's going to favor a form of self-government, which for the most part is going to be like a democracy or republic. Locke writes a book called The Two Treatises on Government, or Two Treatises on Civil Government, kind of like 2 theories on government. And in this he says that people have 3 natural rights. They have the right to life, to liberty, and to property. And that the government protects those rights. And so this government power comes from the consent of the people. But if the government, whose purpose it is to protect those rights, does not protect those rights, then the people have the power to take away that government and replace it with a new one. Because if the people create the government in the first place, the people can take it away. Okay, so this is where we the people, do ordain creating the U.S. government. Okay, our U.S. founding fathers take a lot of ideas from these philosophers. So his quote here is, "It is in the hands of the people to choose their leader. If the government does not protect their rights, the people have the power to change the government." Now, Locke's ideas of natural rights come from the scientific laws about nature, the idea that there's a law about gravity, there's a law about planetary motion. It comes from humanism, this individuality, and it comes from challenges to the church, which all lead into having natural rights. Voltaire is our next philosopher. He is from France. He is going to write about and fight for tolerance, reason, the use of reason, freedom of religion, and freedom of speech. He's actually put in jail for a while in France because of his beliefs, and going to flee to England when he gets out of jail and live in England for a couple years. His ideas can be seen in our First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. And one of his famous quotes says, "I do not agree with a word you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it." So he's all about freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Our next is going to be Montesquieu. He's going to write The Spirit of the Laws. He is from France and traveled to England and looked at the English form of government with the king and parliament and a judicial branch, and said that the best form of government includes the separation of powers, because while he's living, France has an absolute monarch by the name of Louis XIV. And so he's looking at England and saying, wow, England is so much better run than France is. And so he comes up with this idea of separation of powers and how checks and balances are used to prevent one person from gaining too much power, and says that's the best form of government. Our founding fathers in the U.S. then take this idea and run with it, creating the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch that we have today. Rousseau is going to be our next philosopher. He talks about people being naturally good, but how society corrupts them. Okay, think about kids watching awful TV shows today or violence on TV. He's going to write a book called The Social Contract. So when you see something in italics or underlined, it's generally the name of a book. Okay, so like Leviathan was in italics. The Social Contract is in italics, which states that government is in a contract between rulers and the people. Very similar to the theory that Thomas Hobbes had, which we also call the theory of social contract, except Rousseau takes the name of the theory and makes it the name of his book. His social contract is different from Hobbes. His social contract, in Hobbes, it's an agreement between society and its government. So it's a collective society, all making the decision together. In Rousseau, it's an agreement between free individuals to create the society and the government. So you could have a different decision than I could have of this social contract. That's something you've got to remember and understand that difference. Mary Wollstonecraft is our only female who is looking at how all of these philosophers are talking about rights for men and voting for men and equality for men. And she says, hey, what about the women? Why can't the women have the same rights as men? She wants what is called suffrage. Suffrage is the right to vote. And so she's going to start writing about how women should get the right to vote as well. Now, in the new packet, the current notes don't have this, but the new notes do. Okay, so if we go to our animations and we do a preview, oh, that was super fast. Think about which thinkers relate to which ideas and which impact where it's seen in the US and elsewhere in the world, and go ahead and complete that chart, and then download the PowerPoint if you have the new notes, and take away the little blocks and see if you get it right. And that's it for the Enlightenment notes. We'll do a lot in class looking at these philosophers and their ideas through primary resources and Venn diagrams and all of those fun things.